Critical race theory is getting absolutely destroyed everywhere we look, but most especially on Bill Maher's show. In this video, we're going to see how two academics clashed on CRT. We're going to see how a very loud and obnoxious ultra-left proponent got shut down on national television. And stick with me to the very end of this video where you're going to learn how you can shut down the leftists in your life as well. You're not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Patriots all across the globe, Dr. Steve here with you. I am your daily fake news antidote. As each and every day I provide patriotic analysis to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. So if you've ever done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. And we've got a free gift resource just for you. If you want to understand critical race theory better and how we together can defeat it, you're going to love my book, Woke, which is absolutely free for a limited time as an ebook download. It's everything you need to understand and respond to this far-left assault on our nation and our cultural traditions. Just click on that link below, and for a limited time, you can get it absolutely free. It's my gift to you. All right, gang. Bill Maher had on his show the amazing Professor Glenn Loury, together with the far-left MSNBC contributor Michael Eric Dyson, to debate critical race theory in light of the humiliating loss by Democrats in Virginia. So let's take a look.
And in Virginia, they lost all. This is a state Biden won by 10 points. They lost all. They lost the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, the state house. When Republicans lose, they always say, well, you have to do an autopsy. So what's the autopsy on the Democrats?
It's a center-right country. As Joe Manchin says, the Democrats have overplayed their hand. McAuliffe thought that by using the phrase racist dog whistle, he could rebut a legitimate argument from parents concerned about the way in which racial issues were being taught to their children. He was wrong. To me, the most interesting thing about Virginia is that that issue could make the difference in the outcome of the race. It would necessarily weigh against McAuliffe, but how is it that it made the difference in the outcome of the race, to which I attribute the general weakness of the leadership of the Democratic Party? I'm talking about President Joseph Biden, who's something less than an absolutely compelling and charismatic figure.
All right, that was a very, very fair assessment from Professor Loury. This is a center-right country, and it's becoming more so. And this is because, as even liberals have admitted, the Democrats are moving so far to the left that they're leaving the political center completely open for the right to take. And that's exactly what's been happening in Virginia, where parents, Latinos, non-college grads, again, many of whom had mostly voted Democrat in the past, all came together to give the Republicans a massive landslide win. So let's see how the good Professor Dyson responds.
Well, I don't know if I agree with Professor Loury about the total consequence, but clearly, in the interim, yeah, it was. I don't know if it's quite the Obama shellacking during his first midterm, but I think it's more of a mixed message, because India Walton, of course, did, as you say, ran unopposed. The Democratic mayor, who was already suffering because he handled poorly the aftermath of the George Floyd protests and the economic recovery of the Buffalo Renaissance. He took her for granted. He blew her off. He wouldn't even debate her.
All right,
then he got involved.
Just so small potatoes one. Let's talk about the big one in Virginia.
But even with Buffalo, the point is that it was not a referendum on whether a Democratic socialist could govern, because she spoke to the issues of the people. When you think about Virginia, dare I say that, yeah, you don't have Trump to beat up on. Maybe one of the lessons was Trump is not a good whipping boy or sufficient as a whipping boy to get you elected.
I think that's definitely true.
But what's interesting is Trump has been displaced and therefore distributed, because now you don't need Trump involved. It's like Deus Ex Machina. He's the ghost in the machine. The point is that parents who were spooked by critical race theory, none of whom can define it. When you ask them what it is, they don't know. But what they do know is that black people are being centered, their history is being taken seriously. And if you say you're concerned about history in America, why is it that when it comes to black history, it becomes a bit
But I find that a disingenuous argument.
All right, now we'll get to Bill Maher's great response in a second. Suffice it to say that this notion that Virginia parents have no idea what CRT actually is, that none of them could define it if they were asked, is so ridiculously elitist. It's so arrogantly pompous, and it's precisely one of the reasons that Democrats have lost the political center. Rather than reach out to these parents, dialoguing with them, trying to understand what's really concerning them, leftists mock them. They ridicule them, and as we see, they disparage them by claiming that they're too comfortable in their own whiteness, right? They don't want black history to be taught. As I pointed out in my reaction video to the Ben Shapiro and Malcolm Nance debate on CRT, which I'll link down below for you in the pinned comments section, Dyson is committing the fallacy of equivocation here. Critical race theory is not the same as history. It's a theory, it's not history. And the distinction is crucial to understand precisely what Virginia parents are so upset about, as we'll find out later in this video.
Disingenuous argument, because I don't think that is what people are objecting to. I don't think most people, and of course there are some places in this country where they will, and some people who will, but they're not objecting to black history being taught. There are other things going on in the schools. Can we just, like separating children by race? And describing them as either oppressed or oppressor. I mean, there are children coming home who are feel traumatized by this. That's what parents are objecting to.
Now, what Bill Maher just said there was key, and he's absolutely right about that. This is precisely what parents are objecting to. It's the redefining of our history and indeed the whole of our culture around an oppressed-oppressor binary. And that's at the heart of critical race theory, or more broadly, what's called critical theory. It's widely recognized to have come from the Frankfurt School, which was a group of European academics who came over to the United States to escape Hitler. But they brought their cultural Marxist ideas to the American university in the process, and for various reasons, those ideas flourished in universities across the nation. And at the heart of the Frankfurt School's ideology is this notion of critical theory, which teaches students how to expose everything in our culture, from our politics to our economics, our entertainment, our fashion, you name it. Everything is inherently racist. Again, I explore this in more detail in that free ebook you can download just by clicking on the link below. And critical theory enters into our classrooms through the broader notion of what's called critical pedagogy. And yes, you can see countless articles on the web that shows teachers how to employ critical pedagogy into their classrooms, of which CRT is a variant. So that's precisely what Bill Maher is saying here. It's that parents see that paradigm being taught to their kids, that our society is made up of oppressor and oppressed, and they don't want it. So let's see how Dyson answers this one.
You do know that the beginning, and I know Professor Loury knows that, the beginning of critical race theory in the modern times is 2 years ago. Christopher Rufo, a white guy who said, look, I'm reading the anti-racist literature. I see this critical race stuff. This stuff will make good publicity. And he began to drive it home. It's not critical race theory. It's the notion of centering black people as historical agents. And the question is, if you talk about white kids being traumatized, oh, really? So that black kids being made to portray slaves? I mean, we got stories on both sides. I do think you're underestimating the anti-black sentiment that's deeply entrenched, that's way beyond Trump, which is troubling to me. It ain't just Donald Trump. Well, it's the party itself.
Wow, now that was one of the most self-owning, incriminating answers I could think of. First off, what Dyson said about Chris Rufo is categorically false. CRT has at least a 40-year history. So what he just said there is patent nonsense. But secondly, did you notice what he actually said? Bill Maher's problem with CRT is that it's traumatizing kids with this oppressor-oppressed paradigm being taught. And what was Dyson's response? His response was basically, well, welcome to the club. Black kids have been traumatized by whites for years. So apart from this being a blatant fallacy of what's called tu quoque, which is basically, well, you do it too. Tu quoques are fallacies. Apart from that, he's actually admitting that this oppressor-oppressed paradigm is precisely what's being taught to the kids. And so he absolutely contradicts his first point, the elitist assertion that parents don't know what they're talking about when it comes to CRT. This is the most ridiculous self-own I think I've come across in a long time, and that's saying something.
It's American history that we're talking about, and the question is, in what register do we tell the story about American history? Blacks don't have a separate history from America.
Absolutely.
Secondly, I just have to observe, Buffalo, New York, socialism. I mean, this is the Rust Belt. This is working class, white, hard hat on the east side of Lake Erie, Buffalo, New York. Socialism? How did you ever think socialism was going to sell in Buffalo, New York? Thirdly, they do this every time. By they, I mean the activists on the left who want to push the woke canon. They deny that what I see with my lying eyes is actually what I'm seeing with my lying eyes. I don't have to be able to parse what Derek Bell or Kimberly Crenshaw might have written in a law review to know that the race issue has come into the classroom because of what has happened in the aftermath of George Floyd and all of that.
Right.
Defund the police? Come on. Defund the police when crime is going up, when homicide is through the roof, when people are feeling unsafe in their communities. And then people say, well, no, we didn't really mean defund the police. We just meant rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic. So I think they underestimate the determination of the American people to resist a certain kind of interpretation of the story about the country. There's many different ways of telling that story, and we African Americans are going to have to come into some understanding with the rest of the country about how we tell the story together.
Yeah, Glenn Loury's brilliant. He is so good. Again, what he said here is dead on. The only history that Americans want is a history that we share, that brings us together. That's the purpose of what's known as cultural memory. Cultural memory is the collective history shared by a people that bonds them together as a community. And what Loury so brilliantly calls out here is that Dyson and other CRT advocates have this absurd notion that by fixating on the past and present sins of one particular race, that's somehow going to bring the country together. It's the most absurd and preposterous notion imaginable. Somehow, some way, by focusing on how racist and bigoted the largest people group in our nation was and continues to be, that fixation is somehow going to unite our nation? It's absurd. It's socially, culturally lethal, and it was resoundingly rejected by Virginia voters. Just a bit more here.
If you're saying that, look, we need to transcend race and all these boxes people are putting in, black people are not the ones putting folk in boxes. When we look at American society, black people are aspiring to participation in the larger circle of American privilege. They're not the ones who want to stay segregated.
Well, then why is it a microaggression for a professor to say we live in a colorblind society? If a white professor stands up at a university and says, a colorblind society, you can expect a raft of
or at least that's what we aspire to.
Well,
but, I mean, when you say segregation, I mean, a lot of the segregation, I did a thing about this a couple of weeks ago, is working the other way. I mean, segregated dorms at college campuses, they're not white segregated, they're black folks who want to live without white people in their dorm. Separate graduation ceremonies. Okay, so
but you know that it's just like where all the black kids sitting together. You pass 25 tables of white kids sitting together to find the 26th table with all black people.
Is that the year we're living in now?
Exactly. This is getting old, man.
I just feel like that's not the year we're living in now, where the white kids won't sit with the black kids at college.
No, that's simplistic and reductionist.
I mean, you said it.
No. What I'm saying is, I'm responding to you saying there was segregation. I'm telling you, it's not as if black people don't want to participate in American society. The barriers are there, and we're being ignorant.
But I hate to harp on this, but college campus.
All right, we've gone from Dyson's colossal self-owning to now a ridiculously failed false analogy. Again, just think about what he said. He just equated self-segregation at lunch tables with formally recognized and institutionally enforced black-only dorms. I want that to hit you. This guy is considered by some to be a leading academic. All you have to do is ask yourself one very simple question. If that analogy is valid, then are we also seeing formally recognized and institutionally enforced white-only dorms? There are white kids in that lunchroom too, aren't there? I mean, this is absurd, and yet it passes as academic analysis. Look, when all is said and done, Michael Eric Dyson is a radical ethnocentric tribalist. All you got to do is replace his every mention of blacks with whites, and you'll see just how ethnocentrically racist his rhetoric really is. William F. Buckley once quipped that he'd rather be governed by the first 100 names in the Cambridge phone book than be governed by the faculty of Harvard University. I'm glad to see that Virginia parents are doing precisely that and consigning these supposed academics to the ash heap of history. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my reaction video to Ben Shapiro's smackdown with Malcolm Nance on CRT. I give you a deep dive on how to win any argument on this issue. You're going to absolutely love it. So make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.